The coaching business, it's funny. I don't want to, I don't know if I'm ready to scale with like a team of people. And I don't know, it just feels a little bit like a bait and switch. Like I kind of feel like what I'm offering them is my expertise. And so I don't necessarily want to be, you know,
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to 7 and 8 figures without burning out. Before Purple Circle, I started and scaled several 7 and 8 figure career coaching businesses myself and consulted with 2 career coaching businesses that are now doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or just building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. Today, my guest is Matthew Jonas, an executive career coach and creator of the six-figure job offer framework, known for helping senior professionals land higher paying roles, often with salary increases up to 40% within just 90 days. With over a decade of experience and a background in scaling his own business, Matthew has built a thriving coaching practice working with clients from top companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Disney. I'm excited to dive into how he built his coaching business, his client acquisition strategies, and what's worked for him in scaling a premium executive coaching offer. Welcome to the show, Matthew.
good to meet you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Matthew, tell me a little bit more about what inspired you to become an executive coach.
I appreciate the question. My background is I was a senior executive in an organization. I was a co-founder of a startup company in early 2000s. I started with 2 partners, a company called Catapult Marketing. And we were working at the time with major brands like Intel Computer, M&M Mars, LVMH, big global brands. And we were lucky that we scaled our agency from 35 people to over 350 employees in under 2 years. We had about $100 million in revenue. And we were one of the largest independent agencies in the country at that time. And I was a big part of scaling that business, and not both from a revenue standpoint, but also from building the team. And it was one of those situations where we were growing so fast, we had to staff. But even still, we were very particular in who we hired. So in just a couple of years, I did over 1,100 interviews with candidates and made offers to about 200 people. Now, eventually we sold the business. And once I got out of it, I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to work for those big companies anymore because frankly, I just never felt like they valued me and what I was, sacrificing to work for them and, in terms of compensation and reward. So what I decided to do was pivot and go into coaching. And I thought about what could I take from that experience that would help me to help other people. And one of the things I realized is, all these people wanted jobs from me. And maybe what I learned from interviewing so many is to teach them how to interview and more effectively and to get the roles they really want. So that's where the original system came into being. And I started doing that work over 12 years ago and have been doing it ever since.
And how has the journey been once you started it to where you are at today?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been that, and a lot of things have changed in the interim. Back in the day, I was one of the OG guys who got into the LinkedIn services program. So I was one of I don't know how many they admitted, but I was one of them. And so what was happening in the beginning was, that was my source for all my leads. And like the first 2 years, I got a ton of business off of that, like even consulting projects and speaking engagements and all kinds of requests were coming in through LinkedIn. And this was probably like 2012 or maybe 2013, 14, something like that. And so that was a great resource. And, at that time, they would get a request and they would only send it to 5 coaches or 5 service providers. So it was a bit of a race. You had to get in very quickly to respond. Otherwise, you would just get shut out. Now, the good news was that the, customers or the clients who were looking for services, they got only 5 proposals. So that was good. The bad news was if you weren't fast, you would miss out. So, and at that point, I was doing everything manually. So it was literally, having to respond, wherever I was, stopping and on my phone or on my computer and having to send these proposals in, and then someone would come in the middle of the night. Anyway, it was working, and I was doing pretty well, and I was getting a ton of requests. So there was a lot of stuff coming in, and challenge with it was, of course, not everybody was really interested in coaching. Some people, were looky-loos or just, curious or things like that. So, and not everybody was really in my target. So, and also LinkedIn had a limitation of where you lived mattered. So you would only get them from a certain area. So you're only really tapping into, a portion of what the real market is out there. Anyway, I did that for a few years. After a while, I realized that automation would make things easier. So I engaged some partners who helped me automate responses. And that way I didn't have to, I just never had to worry about missing an opportunity. And, so that helped. And then I would push people to book a call with me. And so I'd get them on my calendar and, then, really just a matter of having those strategy calls and getting them to sign up for the program. And, that was really the beginning, and it's really evolved from there. But that's how it started.
And how is it like today? How does do you see the business today?
Well, one of the challenges of being dependent on, a platform to provide leads is that the platform changes. So being, about less than a year ago, I noticed that, well, a couple things happened. But the first thing that happened is LinkedIn kind of opened up the program. So it wasn't just 5 people anymore. It was suddenly more people were getting the same, opportunities. So clients on that platform were getting a little bit inundated by many proposals from all kinds of, different services. And I'm a coach. So, when I'm competing against a resume service or a resume writer, it's like apples and oranges. It's like a totally different kind of a program, different price points and everything. So, you have to weed through that. So that made it a little bit complicated. But last year, in about May of last year, LinkedIn really changed their algorithm. So it went from, I was getting, over 50 requests a month. And it literally overnight went down to like 5. It's just like they went away. It was just like just turned the spigot off, and it was just what's going on. And it took me about 6 weeks to figure out that. And I called LinkedIn. I have clients who work at LinkedIn, so I called them. I'm like, "What's going on over there?" They're like, "Nothing," and they were all about not saying anything. Nothing's changed, but something did change. They changed the whole program. In fact, another thing I noticed is at one point I even changed my location on LinkedIn because I wanted to do work with more tech people. So I relocated to Seattle, as for my base. So I was really tapping into all of the fangs and everything. And I noticed that I was starting to get requests from North Carolina and other markets, not even the home base market. So that was another change in their algorithm. Anyway, what ultimately I got to somebody not part of LinkedIn who said, "Oh yeah, here's what happened." And they sort of blew up the program that I had been part of for, 7 or 8 years, and really changed the game. So I had to change my strategy. And so instead of still do that, I still use the LinkedIn portion, although it's probably the less effective portion of what I'm doing, which is, when people make requests on LinkedIn, it gets funneled to me. But now what I'm doing is I have an outreach through LinkedIn where I'm targeting candidates who are demonstrated that they're in the job market. And so we qualify them a couple of different ways. And I am sending them an email, connecting with them on LinkedIn. And then it's much more effective and allows me to really target more effectively the kinds of candidates who are the right match for my services and, the right sort of income levels and title levels and things like that. So
And
that's working really well.
who are these types of client? What is your ideal client?
I usually say it's mid to senior level candidates, right? Usually the person that the sweet spot for me is somebody who is a senior manager, director, a VP, maybe VP, probably maybe wanting to get into the C-suite. They're making 180 to probably $350,000 a year, and they've probably been at their job for 4 or more years. The reason, and so the reason they're the ideal person for me is they've been out of the job market, search market long enough that it's changed a lot. And they've also probably not kept up with their income in the sense of, salaries have gone up in the market, but as we know, we get the most money when we come in the door. Yeah, we get incremental raises and things like that, but it never matches what somebody new coming into that role would get, based on what the market offers. Now, things have changed a lot, obviously, because of remote work and the pandemic and, salary levels, depending on what state you live in. So a lot of things have changed on that basis, but that's the general reason. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, does answer
Okay.
the question. Where do you find, like you mentioned initially, it was you were working on LinkedIn, and then that kind of changed today. That's not the main one. So where do you find your clients
Yeah.
mostly? What is the marketing channel that's primary channel for you?
Yeah. It's still LinkedIn. It's just how I'm using LinkedIn. So I'm not using LinkedIn. I using LinkedIn in two different ways. One is through the LinkedIn services that they offer, right? Which I would call it more of a passive approach. So in other words, candidates will reach out and say, I need help in my career and I'm interested in talking to a coach. So I have that. I also, separate from that, I have another program that I am using LinkedIn for. I'm using working with a third party on LinkedIn where we are going after people, very specific people, and targeting them through Sales Navigator to identify candidates who we verify are in a job search. And then I'm approaching them, and they're like, oh, as a matter of fact, I am in a job search. Like they're not asking for the services, but I'm finding them in a way that I say, oh, maybe you need help with your job search. And they're like, yeah, that's funny. I just started looking, So we can identify them that way. And then we approach them. And then, and quite frankly, that's more effective.
You said you do this through a third party, so it's like a marketing agency that does this for you, or
Yeah. Yeah.
I see. Do you know specifically like how do they do it? Do you filter about the people who are open to work that have that open to work tag or?
Yeah, it's sometimes that, but a lot of people don't use that tag because it's been shown not to be really very helpful. But it's also people, maybe they posted their resume somewhere else on a different site, and we cross verify across. So we look for people who posted a resume, who just made an indication that they're starting to look, and so that's how we target them. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
And you'd say that right now LinkedIn is the majority of like when it comes
Well,
to lead generation for you.
here's the thing. I mean, LinkedIn is a business platform. Although, people argue it's changed and it's becoming more of like, Facebook or something, but it's a business platform. So it's the right context, to people. And also, again, targeting mid senior level people. One of the biggest challenges, even on LinkedIn, is, I get requests every day from people I wish I could help, but I just can't afford. I can't afford to work with them, and they can't afford to hire me. But they need help, and so I try to refer them out to other resources that are, maybe in their price range. But but it is a business platform, so contextually, it feels like the right place to. But obviously, TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, are also great platforms, but it's very wide net. So one of the problems that I even noticed on LinkedIn before I was doing this targeting was, again, just getting requests from all different levels of people, which is just more work for me to kind of
Hmm.
feed, filter them out, which I talk to, prospects who are, you know, are open to and willing to make an investment in their career and afford to do that.
I wanted to dive just a little bit deeper into this method. So once you basically figured out that this person is looking to in the job market, then there's like a sequence that you send out to them to kind of get them to get in a call with you, or how does that
Yeah,
conversion happen
yeah.
there?
Basically, I usually connect with them on LinkedIn, and then if they respond like, yeah, they'd be interested, or like, somebody says, yeah, this sounds interesting, then I response that will say, "Oh, great, here's explains what I do. Would you like to set up a call? Here's a link." And we set up usually a 15-minute call, just a short call, that we then, which can sometimes turn into a little bit longer call. It just depends. Where I get to know them. It's a high pressure call, but but I talk to them about what they're looking for, and I qualify them, but also let them know about what I provide, and it's helping identify what pain points they have and what my solutions are for that, and then from there it sometimes goes direct to let me send you an agreement and we'll get started, or let's schedule a follow up call and materials and the program in more detail. So either a
Hmm.
strategy call or sometimes they're ready to go just right there.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. It's much more clear now, and makes a lot of sense. Matthew, what are your goals right now for the next 1 to 3 years? What is one of the biggest goals that you have for your coaching business?
The coaching business, it's funny. I mean, I don't want to, I don't know if I'm ready to scale with like a team of people. And I don't know, it just feels a little bit like a bait and switch. Like I kind of feel like what I'm offering them is my expertise. And so I don't necessarily want to be, doing things like that. So I'd rather curate my business where I have a limited number of clients I see every month, right? So I can guarantee them a high level of service. And I think I'd probably want to, scale up my fees, but be able to maintain, and having to, build a big team of to manage. I mean, I've done that in the past. I've had a big team, that just creates other challenges in terms of running a business and an operation that, I love doing the work. I love working with but it would be great to, just scale it in certain ways and really make it more of a higher end boutique for those several people. So that would be one thing. I think I could do better. I could do a better job in getting referrals from my existing clients. It does happen, but I don't have a program for developing that, and I wish I did. That's something I'd like to have as well, because I think I'm missing probably on some opportunities there. And
Hmm.
I mean, but yeah, that's it. I like to. I have other things that I do. I run a nonprofit organization. I mean, I have other projects that I'm involved in. So I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to get it to, yeah, you
Yeah,
said somebody in the intro about, $1 million business. I mean, that would be way more than I would want to do at this point.
yeah. When it comes to investments, considering you're a decade into the business right now, what of support has been most valuable in you growing business so far?
Yeah, I mean, there's tools that I've, I mean, obviously LinkedIn and Navigator and things like that. I've with different software platforms. I've taken some trainings. Um, some have been really helpful. Some have been honestly not helpful, and it was a complete waste of money. But I learned something. So, you have to kind of think about it that way. And really, a lot of what I've got now is a few years ago paid for a training to try to create. They had a little different approach, but um, you know, it just worked. This works a lot better, and it's more, it's more of a targeted thing and forth. So, you just have to, but you do have to make investments, and that's just part of being a business. Last year, when everything went away, there was like a, holy crap moment. Like, what do I do now? And you know what? I figured out a solution, and it's working and getting better every month, and we're building it. So, but you have to make those pivots, and I had to make an investment to do that. So I
Hmm.
think just any business person needs to realize that. Listen, when I talk to about a new job, one of the questions I ask them: are you willing to make an investment in your career? Well, I can't ask them to do that if I'm not willing to make an investment in my business to make sure that I can provide the services and I can, do everything I need to do, right? So it's the same thing. It's part of being in business is sometimes you need to invest in your business to grow it to the next level.
And I wanted to ask you, what is something that you wish you had known when you first started scaling your coaching business? Like, what is an unexpected lesson learned from you?
Well, I mean, the big thing was the automation, right? Automation is awesome. I even had somebody comment I got them on LinkedIn. They're like, impressive automation skills. Like, I don't know how they just knew that, but they somehow knew that, it wasn't an accident that I found them and I sent them a message. Although, I do use people also. I mean, I have VAs and things like that are doing some of the work. So it's just like the same message to everybody. But yeah, automation is absolutely critical, especially if you're, a solopreneur and there's just you can't do everything and you can't respond to everything in a timely manner. So building those automation, building those journeys so that you can, drip and messaging and things like that. That made a big difference, and I wish I had started that earlier. So that would be one thing.
Yeah. And in terms of challenges, what are some of the biggest challenges that you either faced or are still facing now regarding scaling your coaching business?
You know, there's two things, probably the biggest challenge that I have is, managing the the calls, and the what I need to do in the business. I mean, it's just and things I feel like get dropped out. Like probably my follow up funnel is not where it should be in terms of, there's a lot of people who say yes, and then some people are like a clear no, which is great. But there's a lot of people who are like, well, let me think about it or talk about it. And I probably do a better job of following up with some of those people and to get them to, to program. But again, I also manage how many clients I'm working with at one time. So sometimes I don't feel like I need to because, it's been a good month. So, and so it's like, do I need to? And I really want to work with candidates who are excited about it. I want to convince somebody to do it. They're reluctant because they end up not being a good candidate and not being a good client, and it's harder to get them results because that's important to me also is I want to work with people who I know are to this work because I can't do it for them. Ultimately it's
Hmm.
for them. So that would be one thing. And I guess the second, and to follow up on that, the second thing is, is just, getting those testimonials and getting those, the feedback from people who have had success with the program and updating it. That's always that's like another job that has to be done that, when you're busy we're doing the front end of the business, it take away from that. But those things are critical and important and people pay a lot of attention to those. So.
And you think like this is coming due to capacity constraints?
Yeah, capacity constraints and yeah, just having a system in place for it to do it and just making it part of the routine. But yeah, I for
Mm. And another question I have for you today is how do you currently handle, and we talked a little bit about this because you mentioned the automations as well, but how do you currently handle the balance between delivering great client results and managing business growth on the other side? So basically working on your business versus working in your business.
yeah, well, I think you constantly need to look at, first of all, I talk with other coaches, and so I from them, that's one of the ways, and I about different strategies and looking at service offerings and looking at ways in which I can create value for my clients. That would also mean maybe being able to, charge more, right? And I think that's a big problem for a lot of coaches who are starting out is they don't know what to charge. And then I've had some people look at my program and say, you could be charging double, but at the time I didn't have enough clients. I'm like, I can't even get people to buy it at this price. What are you talking about? So, you have to get the confidence to be able to do that. And it's true that you can, probably charge more, many people can for their services, but you're good, you may have to change your expectations about how many customers you have. But I would say, well, wait, if you charge double and if half as many, you're still making the same amount of money, and then you have more time to do other things, right? So there's, but you have to be comfortable in doing that. So that is one thing, is figuring out, um, also, like I said to you before, you know, I really enjoy this work, and I enjoy working with the candidates and helping them, and about the success that they have. So for me, it's managing the scale of the business while still, being able to, do most of the work, myself. Obviously, some of the administrative stuff I outsource so that I can
Hmm.
really be doing the coaching. I think, quite honestly, yeah, if I could get somebody to come in and do the sales, that would be great, because then, that would free up a lot of my time to work with my clients more, and, focus on that. So that would probably be one thing. But
Hmm.
I haven't really found that person. And also, I feel like, they're me as a coach, so they want to meet with me. They don't want to meet with, a third.
Yeah. So that makes sense, and it comes back to that capacity issue when it comes to sales, right? I also like, is there any aspect of running your coaching business right now that would, in quotation, keep you up at night, figuratively?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really, but I mean, the thing that happened last year was pretty scary. When the algorithm changed and suddenly I felt, like I was really at the mercy of one platform. Now, I don't feel that way now because I'm using the platform, but I'm not relying on it, if that makes sense. I mean, in other words, it's not, I do have what LinkedIn is sending me, but then I'm using the platform of LinkedIn to other people, so, or prospects. And so from that perspective, I think, this is kind of a game changer. But that is the thing, if you have all your business coming from one source, that's a scary place to be. And when I had my agency, if we had one client that was 80% of our revenue, that was a scary position to be in too, because clients leave at some point. They always do, right? So it's just a matter of when. So then you're out of business. So you want to have, more streams, if you will, of, or ways to get the kind of, target audience you're looking for.
Generation, right? And
Yeah.
have you also like built your own newsletter where you kind of like, once people um, are contacted by you and then they kind of go into like another
Yeah, like
system?
that's what I'm saying. I don't have that. I mean, I have a list. I have a list from the last,
Hmm.
like, probably 4 years. I don't even know how many thousands of people are on that thing, but I've never, but I don't, and a lot of them probably aren't even prospects for me, quite honestly, because they're not executive level people, but I mean, they all came from LinkedIn, but I do have this spreadsheet. But yeah, I haven't leveraged that. I could do something like that. Might be interesting to see what comes out of it. What I don't want to do, though, is just get a bunch of people booking calls with me who aren't qualified. It's amazing to me. Some people just want to talk. They just want to talk to somebody. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you have to be professional and polite, but I don't want to waste my time with
Hmm.
people who aren't really, and I ask qualifying questions before I take a call with people to see if they're house they are. And if they give me an
Yeah.
indication like, yeah, they really need help, but they can't afford it, or they can't do this, or they can't do that, I don't want to waste our time in that. So I'd rather just be
Yeah.
professional and polite and say, I don't think this is a good fit, than, get into, talking to people who I can't help, and they really are not a client for me.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Matthew. And is there any advice you'd give to other career or executive coaches who are going to be watching this, yeah, that are looking to scale their impact?
Yeah, I would just say that, listen, yeah, you've got to make an investment in yourself, just like you're asking your to do, in terms of, getting the right systems for your business, and figure out what for you specifically. Not every career coaching business is the same. Everybody has a different approach, and the results maybe are similar, but, we go about it a certain way. So find your niche, and yourself, and get out there and do it. It's a lot of people right now are looking for help and looking for work, and um, yeah, put your systems in place and just stick with it. And you're gonna have to make changes when it stops working, and it will at some point stop working, and you'll pivot and figure out what to do next.
Thank you so much, Matthew. And for anyone who wants to find you or reach out to you, they can find you at Matthew Jonas on LinkedIn, or they can also go into your website, which is six-figureexecutivecoaching.com, and they
Exactly.
could also connect with you there. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, Matthew. I really like the insights that we went through, and yeah, lovely episode. Looking
Yeah.
forward to
Thank
meeting you
you.
again. Maybe in a few years, things have changed again.
Yeah, yeah, for giving me the opportunity. It sounds like a great platform, and yeah, I'd love to, continue the dialogue and any way I can contribute. One of the big things is, helping other coaches and helping each other and supporting each other and learning from each other. That's been invaluable to me, not just in this part of my journey, but in whole career journey. So I really value that, you know, that aspect of it. So thanks for letting me contribute in this way, and hopefully somebody got something out of this that'd be helpful to them.
Well, thank you for contributing again to us
Yeah.
and to the community of career and executive coaches. So, thank you.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to 7 and 8 figures without burning out. To learn more about Purple Circle, our community, and how we can help you grow your business, visit joinpurplecircle.com.